So thank you everyone for your time. I will be your moderator today. My name is Dalia Simangan. I'm Associate Professor at Hiroshima University. Just some formalities to begin this webinar. This is a NERPS webinar series on peace and sustainability in the context of global change. And we started this webinar series 4 years ago. Could you believe it? Like 4 years ago in celebration of the International Day of Peace. Tomorrow is the International Day of Peace. So this is really a suitable time to do our 34th NERPS webinar. And the webinar series, at the time when we started it, our inaugural speaker was Professor Jeffrey Sachs of Columbia University. And we are very happy that this is still ongoing with this 34th installment. And this serves, we attempt to make this webinar series as a platform, not just for peace researchers or professors or students, but also to practitioners and to practitioners, development workers, and so on. So the webinar series is a platform to bring together people from different academic backgrounds, from different disciplines, and from different sectors as well. And again, as I've mentioned, tomorrow is the International Day of Peace. And I'd like to invite everyone in the room and also online. Later on, after we finish this webinar, we'll be celebrating the anniversary of the Positive Peace Society, our very own Hiroshima University's Positive Peace Society. So I invite everyone to stay for 30 minutes more after the webinar. And just to remind some housekeeping, those who are attending online, later on we'll have a chance for Q&A. And if you'd like to raise your question by yourself, because this is a webinar set up, so we have, if you want to raise a question by yourself, please use the raise hand function, and then I will enable your microphone. And please don't forget, if you have questions or reflections, to please state your name and your affiliation. And this webinar is being recorded. We're going to edit it nicely later. Our NERPS team here is assisting us to do that later. And so if you have issues with, showing yourself or speaking online, please let the team know if you have issues with that. And we will be sharing also the recording via our social media accounts. And of course, our attendees in person, if you have a question or reflection or some comment, feedback to our speaker, please just raise your hand and then I will give the floor to you. Okay, the topic of today's webinar is peace-based approaches for desertification, revisiting UNCCD's policies and practices. So through our speaker's expertise and experience, we will be learning about the past achievements when it comes to addressing desertification, as well as current challenges and some of the future work that we need to do or future action to overcome or to address these challenges. Our speaker today has been a peace advocate for a long time and working tirelessly with various organizations like NERPS and Hiroshima University to forge peace partnerships. And we are very fortunate today to hear from Her Highness Princess Aber Al Saud. Aber was born in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. However, her interest in cultural diversity, sustainability, and peace building has led her to many, many different countries. And I remember recently you were showing your expedition in Antarctica, Aber. And she is recently researching petroculture and hydroculture sustainability, peace sustainability culture nexus, and how peace transcends linearity. In NERPS, we aim to promote or feature work related to the peace sustainability nexus. So Princess Aber's interest and experience really aligns with the goals and aims of NERPS. She's currently working on establishing the Desert University, which is a research station in the Empty Quarter, the world's largest sand desert, and is researching best practices in Antarctica. She is the author of Peace Sustainability Nexus book, More Than a Truce, and that is open access. So I invite everyone to read the book, How Nations Can Build a Permanent Peace and a Sustainable Future. Previously, Aber has worked in multilateral organizations and funds such as the GCC, UN agencies such as USAID, and also JICA here in Japan. In 2019, she spearheaded and was assigned to lead a peacebuilding unit where she successfully managed peacebuilding training workshops. She also successfully managed to promote sustainability and inclusivity by including 40% female participation, activating the WPS, or the Women Peace Security Agenda of the UN. Aber is actively engaged in a full spectrum of activities ranging from nonprofit, for-profit, and responsible profit. She's the chair of Saudi Arabia's MPO, the Sustainable Development Association, or TALGA, and the founder of a multidisciplinary sustainability and cultural studio, Dinar. And on a personal level, she has a passion to preserving endangered species and a dream to create a gallery for that purpose. In her free time, Princess Aber is a multifaceted artist, sailor, show jumper, and world explorer. And we are also honored to have her, of course, as our NERPS associate. Princess Aber, thank you so much for your time. And the floor is yours for your presentation.
Professor Dalia, the honor is all mine. And thank you everyone for making the time to attend the session. You know, Professor Dalia and myself have been working on organizing the session for few months, and we're so excited about it. Professor Dalia, thank you for the beautiful introduction. I feel so humbled. And you outlined almost everything I wanted to highlight about my experience. So I think you covered it all. Well done. So basically, with reference to our workshop today, first of all, I want to outline what we will be speaking today with regards to the topic on the nexus between peace building or peace and desertification nexus. Before that, I want to mention that I know most of you in this session are from Japan and from the region, or people who are passionate about Japanese culture and Japanese universities and research academic approaches. And that is also something that I share with you as the audience attending this webinar today, because as Professor Dalia mentioned, I did my internship for my master's program in Japan. I lived there for a while, and I worked at the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, JICA. And I have, during the tenure there, my tenure and my time there, I wrote the book that Professor Dalia mentioned, which I can share with you openly as a PDF for whoever is interested. Please, at the very end of the session, share your emails, and I'll be more than happy to share the copy of my book to you. And in parallel to the book, I also developed a toolkit, which I called the Peace Building Canvas, the 4D Peace Building Canvas, which I developed during my work at JICA, and I've been doing a lot of workshops to peace building practitioners all over the world on this tool, on how to implement it in conflict areas and fragile states. So previously, just to add my you know, as Professor Dalia mentioned, my expertise is mainly in peace building, multilateralism, and I have so much experience working with multilateral organizations such as different UN agencies, the GCC Secretariat, which is the regional intergovernmental multilateral organization responsible for 6 countries in the GCC, which is Oman, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and UAE. And I also have experience working with the EU, and also a lot of experience working with multilateral fund organizations all over the world. I also established the Peace Building Unit in Saudi Arabia back in 2019 and managed to train more than 60 people in peace building within a period of 18 months. Where I included 60% of participants from the youth and 40% of participants who were females, and merging the military and the civilians in these workshops of peace building capacity, covering various aspects of peace building, from environmental peace to rule of law, security, sector reform, and justice sector reform, and so many other things. So I don't want to take much of your time. I just wanted to give you a more in-depth overview about my experience and how much I'm linked to your region, to your beautiful region. In addition to me doing my internship and work at JICA for a while under the Middle East Department, I have also done on the ground work in the Indochina region in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia on development projects. So I'm very much passionate about your region, and today's session is not just me presenting. I also, at the very end, I encourage you to also educate me and challenge me with questions about what will be presented today. So basically, our topic today is titled Peace-Based Approach and Desertification, the policies and applications of that. Why am I wanting to speak about this today? I know it's not the International Day of Peace, but tomorrow is. But this is in alignment with the International Day of Peace. The reason why I chose this niche topic of linking peace and desertification is because this year, for the very first time in the history of the United Nations, the 3 Rio Conventions will take place consecutively, starting with Colombia leading the COP and the Convention on Biodiversity in October, and then followed up by the COP on climate change in Azerbaijan in November, and finally the COP on combating desertification in Saudi Arabia. So I'll focus today on the 3rd COP. I am also in my role also as a peace building consultant. I'm working on the synergies between these 3 Rio COPs at the moment, actually. But my focus today will be dedicated mostly to the relation between desertification and peace. So the topics I will be talking about, I'll start with introductions to desertification and conflict. So what is the definition of desertification? Desertification refers to land degradation. Usually a lot of people think that theorists think that the Convention on Combating Desertification should have been a different name, and it should have been a Convention on Land Degradation. So, but in definition, you can say that desertification refers to land degradation in arid and semi-arid environments, primarily caused by human activities and climatic variations. It is a significant issue in the region, yes, like the Sahel, for example, the Middle East, Central Asia, and parts of Latin America, which is indirectly impacting the whole world as well, not just these regions. I want to also mention, just going back to the 3 Rio Conventions, the 3rd convention that we were talking about today, which is the Convention on Combating Desertification, is, by the way, the least known convention of all the 3, and it is the one that is receiving, that's the least popular and is very neglected neglected and receiving the least attention from the international community, just for your information. So going back, we defined the desertification, and now to explain the historical context. So there's a link between environmental degradation and conflict that has been documented for centuries. But the recognition of desertification as a driver of conflict is more recent, and it was during COP 12. Let me give you an overview, a history, just briefly about how this all started. So the three Rio Conventions were brought up during the Rio Summit in 1992 in Brazil. However, the Climate Convention was endorsed in 1992. The Biodiversity Convention was endorsed and went into practice in 1993. But the Convention on Combating Desertification was endorsed in Rome in sorry, not in Rome, but it was endorsed in 1994. So it was the last convention endorsed by the United Nations. Before the Rio Convention in 1992, the first time that the topic of desertification was discussed was in the year 1977 in Rome. That was the first year the topic was discussed, and then followed up by a report that was written by the United Nations in 1986, which is called Our Common Future Report. So that's the historical context of how it started. And then, as I mentioned, during COP, sorry, just a moment, during COP 7 in Nairobi, it paved the way to including peace in desertification in Nairobi. That was in 2005, COP 7. And then after that, during COP 10 in Korea, in South Korea, more discussions about peace, linking peace and desertification was highlighted, but with a focus on establishing an initiative called the Forest Peace Initiative that was championed by South Korea, the chair of the COP during that year. And then after that, further development between peace and desertification happened at COP 14. After COP 10, it took four COPs, and at COP 14, officially the Peace Forest Initiative that was discussed in Seoul was endorsed, even though that COP 14 in 2019 was held in India. But Korea continued the discussion and pushed for establishing a peace forest initiative during COP 14, sorry, in 2019. And then in COP 15 in 2025, which is the last COP, which happened in Côte d'Ivoire, also peace was discussed, but it was discussed with relations to resource scarcity rather than the Forest Peace Initiative. So this time in Côte d'Ivoire, it was discussed with reference to resource scarcity and how that leads to conflict in areas of arid environments. So I'm going to now speak about the main impacts of desertification on people. There are three things. The first thing is a reducing arid lands, which diminishes agricultural productivity and access to essential resources like water and food. And this was something that was brought during the COP in Côte d'Ivoire, which I just mentioned in 2022. And the second thing, the second impact on desertification on people is resource scarcity, also again discussed at Côte d'Ivoire, which drives competition, often leading to conflicts, especially in vulnerable regions. And the third thing is degraded land forces populations to mitigate, create tensions in host areas. Moving on, I'll talk now about numbers and statistics. The current context on desertification and conflict with reference to numbers and statistics. So in 2024, this year, over 2 billion people live in regions affected by desertification, by the way. 40% of conflicts in recent decades have been linked to land and resource scarcity, again, which was brought in 2022 by Côte d'Ivoire at the COP. Another statistic says that more than 100 countries are at risk of desertification, which could fuel conflicts and displace 700 million people. And when we say more than 100 countries, that's like, I think that's 70% of the countries on Earth, which is a large number. The last statistic says that 1% increase in temperature led to 11.3% increase of intergroup conflicts in 2015. And I'm sure it's now even more worse, especially post-COVID. So going on to speak about the current context on desertification and conflict, climate change, which is the scapegoat always to amplifying environmental issues, exasperates desertification by increasing temperatures, altering precipitation patterns, and also triggering extreme weather events like droughts and floods. It increases the frequency also and intensity of resource-based conflicts, as observed in areas like Darfur and northern Nigeria as well. So UNCCD, now going on to speaking about UNCCD and COPs on the historical overview and recent developments on peace-based approaches in desertification. Few minutes ago, I spoke briefly about that, but I will cover some aspects that I haven't mentioned earlier. So the UNCCD was established, as mentioned, in 1994, although, as mentioned earlier in this talk today, talks about the establishment of the UNCCD, which is the governing body of the Convention on Combating Desertification, was first discussed in 1977 in Rome, later followed by discussing it in Rio de Janeiro at the Earth Summit in 1992, and finally, officially established in 1994, with COPs serving as the primary decision-making body. And then COP7 in 2005 established a 10-year strategic plan emphasizing the importance of partnerships and sustainable development, indirectly touching on the need for stability and resilience in affected regions through not directly linking into just peace, but also other aspects. And then later in COP9 in 2009 in India, Korea played a huge role, as discussed earlier, in establishing the Peace Forest Group, or initiative. Discussions in that COP in India in 2019, COP9, where covered aspects of socioeconomic impact of desertification, including migration and poverty, because there's high rates of poverty in India. So that was something important for the Indians during that COP in 2019, which began to highlight the broader implications of land degradation, which set the stage for later connections for peace and security. So this is the timeline on how we linked peace to desertification. I hope this is clear. This is the timeline that led or paved the platform for connections to peace and security and desertification. So later on in COP12 in 2015, I think that was in Ankara, if my memory does not fail me, it introduced an initiative called the Land Degradation Neutrality Framework, which is a very important document. I recommend, I don't have the time to explain it in details because it's very technical. So I can do it in another day if requested by NERPS. But I really encourage anyone interested in this field and the Rio Conventions to read the document on the Land Degradation Neutrality Framework, which you can find available online as a PDF. If you Google it, it's everywhere on Google. And then after that, on COP13 in 2017, what happened is that there was an enhancement of focus on land restoration as a tool for conflict prevention, adoption of the drought initiative, addressing drought as a driver of conflict. So keep in mind, when we speak about desertification, we're talking about three main topics: land degradation, drought, and flooding. These are the most important topics when we speak about the combating desertification. So COP13 in 2017 did a lot of progress in pushing the agenda of the drought initiative, linking it to peace so that to reduce conflict among communities and do DRR, disaster risk reduction initiatives to lessen the negative impacts of drought in these areas, so that indirectly it will lessen conflicts between communities in these regions affected by drought. And then later, after COP13 and COP14 in 2019, there was an emphasis, another emphasis, a serious one on peace, on the Peace Forest Initiative, linking forest restoration with peace building in conflict zones. Again, always when peace is linked with forest initiatives, it's always an initiative that is backed by South Korea. It's an important agenda for the South Koreans. And then after COP14 comes COP15, which happened in the year 2022 in Cote d'Ivoire. And discussions were mainly on integrating peace-based approaches into national action programs. And the Cote d'Ivoire chairs wanted to call for a greater financial and technical support from countries facing both desertification and conflict. The 16th session of the UNCCD will take place in December this year, between the 2nd of December to the 13th of December in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia. So previously, during from COP1 since 1994 until COP15 in 2022, most approximately the attendance to these COPs were around 7,000 participants in these COPs. However, the United Nations, the UNCCD, and the Saudi Arabian chair for this year's COP 16, are very ambitious, and they are aiming to attract 40,000 people to attend this year's COP, which is, I think, 5 times more than the number of attendance of the COPs that previously happened before. The reason why the Saudis want to do this is because they realize the importance of this convention on countering or combating desertification, and they want to raise more awareness to all stakeholders, governmental, non-governmental, international, local, NGOs, corporations, private public sector, to as many people as possible, because it's a very important topic that has been neglected and unfortunately is the least popular one in the world. And another thing to mention, a lot of countries in the world are I think unintentionally and are being misled by doing a lot of projects on afforestation and reforestation in arid areas. And this is something that is conflicting with the goals of the cycle of nature, because the ecosystem of arid environments requires that arid environments stay arid, because there are species, both plant species and animal species, that thrive in arid environments. So sometimes it's a dilemma. So you can counter argue that this is a good thing, or that is an advantage or a disadvantage. Some people could say and have a good argument and say afforestation and reforestation in arid areas and deserts is good because of 1, 2, 3, and they may have a point and good argument. And on the counterpart, other people may disagree and say no, we shouldn't do afforestations nor deforestations in arid environments, because we need to keep the ecosystem of these environments preserved, so that the plants and the biodiversity and animals living and thriving in arid environments would not go extinct and would continue to thrive in these ecosystems. So as I mentioned, there are 2 arguments. Both are valid. It depends on the debate. So again, I mentioned that I recommend everyone who's interested in the topic to read more about the land degradation neutrality framework that you can find on Google. It's a very important document if you're interested in the topic. And then I want to talk now about climate-led wars and peace-based approaches and desertification definitions. How can I define climate-led wars? The best thing to define it is to say that climate change exacerbates desertification. Always climate change and climate topics is a scapegoat. So it exacerbates desertification, leading to resource scarcity, which in turn drives conflict. So keep in mind, always, if we're talking about peace and desertification, the main fuel to conflict is resource scarcity. But there are other reasons, but resource scarcity is one important issue that causes the conflict between peace and desertification. And examples of that is competition over water and land. Keep that in mind. And then I want to talk about climate-led peace approaches. They are strategies that integrate climate adaptation and conflict prevention. This is something that I think, and I've been promoting to be added to the agenda of this year's COP 16 in Saudi Arabia. It's not official, so please don't record me on that. but that's something that I think is essential to be done to create a desertification peace alliance, worldwide alliance to be announced at COP16. But don't record what I'm saying. This is just ideas and an academic discussion. Peace-based approaches and desertification examples of strategies. So one, land restoration and conflict prevention. Land restoration involves rehabilitation, degraded land to improve its productivity and ecosystem health, which can prevent conflicts by what? Reducing competition over scarce resources. So if you want to solve the problem, go to the root cause and work on reducing competition over scarce resources. Another, I want to give you an example to that. For example, in Jordan, land restoration efforts in the Zarqa River Basin have improved water management and agricultural productivity, which in return reduced tensions among local communities over limited water resources. This initiative helped to stabilize the region by addressing the root causes of resource scarcity and conflict. That's one case study that is a positive one. Another thing about peace-based approaches to combat desertification, another example of strategies is number 2, sustainable land management. To summarize, number 1 was land restoration and conflict prevention. Number 2, what I will be talking about now is sustainable land management, SLM practices. SLM practices, what is it? What is that? You will ask me, of course. SLM practices involve techniques like agroforestry and soil conservation to maintain land productivity and ecosystem health, which can prevent conflicts by ensuring long-term access to essential resources. For example, now, another case study. I gave you the case study of Jordan in this context on sustainable land management. I'll give you a case study that happened in Ethiopia, the Tigray region specifically. SLM practices like terracing and reforestation have reduced soil erosion and improved food security. Again, mitigating local conflict over diminishing agricultural land. Just a moment. I want to show you something. I don't know if I can. Okay, no, I'll go to my next point of discussion. So challenges around desertification and conflict. What are the challenges on desertification and conflict? Complexity of implementation is number 1. Why? Because aligning national policies with international goal is challenging, obviously, due to what? To number 1, limited resources, and number 2, varying political priorities. That is usually the main hinders to promoting environmental agendas. Limited resources and varying political priorities. That's why we cannot align always at a multilateral level on these conventions, specifically the convention we're talking about at the moment on combating desertification and peace, linking it to peace. The second thing on the complexities of implementation is scaling up successful strategies, which requires sustained financial support and commitment from all stakeholders. It's very hard when you work in multilateral organizations, even if countries and member states join a group or an alliance on peace and desertification alliance or group or whatever you want to call it. When you ask them to pledge, it takes a lot of time for these countries to align and provide the financial support They do commit, I mean, when they give their word, they provide the pledge, of course. They don't, they stick to the word, but it takes ages and a lot of follow-ups and bureaucracies, and it delays so much time, which delays a lot of urgent initiatives to be implemented. And that is one of the two complexities of implementation to contribute to peace and desertification initiatives. Again, local engagement, I want to talk about local engagement and adaptation. I think from my experience in this field, a top-down approach often fails to address the realities on the ground. Why? Because it leads to poor implementation and community disengagement. If you want to do something successful, yes, you need top-bottom, because policies usually come from the top, either from governments or the United Nations or any other multilateral organizations or nonprofit organizations and foundations. So top-bottom is important when it comes to policy. However, if we only rely on top-bottom approaches, we will not reach anywhere. We need both. We need to do also the bottom-top. In this context of peace and desertification, usually what is done is only top-bottom, a top-bottom approach. That's it. There has never been a bottom-top approach. And we need it. We need proximity because this is the only way to make sure that we do something that is sustainable with regards to peace desertification initiatives. Not just apply policies, but do programs and initiatives that are sustainable. Another thing is adaptation to rapidly changing environments, which is crucial as climate change continues to exacerbate desertification, as mentioned before. One last thing on this topic is inadequate monitoring and evaluation. There is no international standard, agreed standard group who can monitor and evaluate the projects on peace and desertification mitigation initiatives. So poor tracking of progress in peace-based desertification initiatives is one of the complexities of implementation. So I mentioned all of the 3 points, but there are many, but these are the most crucial ones. Okay, so I'm almost done. I'm going to talk now about the path forward. From my experience, I think the best path forward to progressing the peace desertification agenda and nexus is enhancing local participation, meaning involving community-based approaches to empower local stakeholders, making interventions more sustainable and effective. Successful examples on this include community-led initiatives in the Sahel and South Asia that combines both local knowledge, which is known as TEK, traditional ecological knowledge. It's a field by itself, and it also requires a dedicated 2-hour discussion maybe for another day, but this is very important as a path forward. And linking TEK, traditional knowledge with modern technologies is important to take for the path forward, these 2 things. Another thing, in addition to enhancing local participation, is improving data collection and analysis. How do we do this? We need to invest in better monitoring tools and techniques and use satellite technology and big data to track progress and adapt strategies. Necessity for more integrated there's a huge necessity for a more integrated, multi-sectoral approaches to address the desertification conflict nexus, if you want to call it this, or the desertification peace nexus. You can call it interchangeably. And also working on the ground, in addition to desk research, is very important when it comes to improving data collection and analysis with regards to the path forward to, okay. And then the final topic I want to discuss is the role of international cooperation. Strengthening global partnerships. It's very important to have strong coordination and collaboration between governments, international organizations, UN agencies, local NGOs, international NGOs, private sector, and foundations and philanthropies. The role, and also regional multilateral organizations such as the African Union, the European Union, and also the GCC Secretariat. These are just examples, but there's a huge list of stakeholders that we could talk about. And if we have a collaboration between all of these people, then we could accomplish so many things in this agenda. The second thing on the role of international cooperation is the role of regional bodies, as I mentioned, African Union, European Union, GCC, in supporting peace-based approaches. And then, in addition to strengthening global partnerships, I think it's very important to also strengthen financial mechanisms. There is a need for increased funding for climate adaptation and conflict prevention programs. Innovating financing mechanisms such as green bonds and climate resilience funds, incorporating nature capital mechanisms into the agendas of financial mechanisms, and also linking sustainable finance with desertification and conflict or desertification and peace initiatives and programming to be implemented. So yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I don't know how much time we have left, because I feel like I overspoke, right? Professor Dalia, can you please tell me how many minutes did I take? Because I have other topics to talk about, but can you advise me how many minutes did I take in this presentation?
So it took you 30 minutes, so we'll probably have 15 minutes for discussion. So thank you so much, Princess Aber, for really giving us, the historical background and historical overview of the problem of desertification, as well as past achievements, the current challenges, and how to move forward. So this really gives us a very holistic understanding of desertification. And I agree with you, climate change is like the sexy topic. We always say it's climate change, but we need to unpack what are the implications of climate change for the environment and also for human society. So I agree with you that desertification is not so well known, but we are all from the land, right? So it's important to also understand this for all of us. And the convention on desertification, I think because of the convention on climate change, that takes a lot of the attention internationally, but not so much on really particular issues, specifically desertification. And I also just want to echo what you've mentioned about the double-edged sword of afforestation and reforestation. Again, this tells us human exceptionalism. Like there's a problem we need to solve using human technologies. I think it's somehow the same with solar radiation management. Although it is a technologically possible solution, we need to be very careful of deploying these kinds of solutions, because it might bite us back, right? So it's important to have continued discussion of the potential adverse side effects of this solutions. For the moment, let's open the floor for questions or reflections from our online participants and also from our in-person participants. Yes, Aaron's son. Please state your name. We have state your name, affiliation, and look at the camera there. So,
Right. So thank you so much for your presentation, Professor Sabir. So it's got me sort of like go back when I lived like 2 weeks with the indigenous community. So that's where I think your point on bottom-up approach, it's very important. So I would just like to get your response like on the role of the indigenous community, right? On their role in desertification, their role in climate change, which I feel is very important. So I would like to hear your comment about that. And I was really intrigued by the idea, okay, this is not on record, but I intrigued with the idea of the Desertification Alliance. So would you, hopefully you would consider organizations from the indigenous community to actually join this Desertification Alliance if it becomes a reality soon. So yeah, thank you.
So shall I answer Professor Dalia now?
yes, your name.
Yeah, sorry, my name is Aaron Dennison. I am a second year PhD student from the Graduate School of Social Science and Humanities. So yes.
Yes,
Perfect.
please go ahead, Princess Sabir.
Perfect. First of all, thank you, Aaron, for attending this session and for your brilliant question. I loved it because I love working with communities, and I always make sure in most of my work in peace building to go to the field myself and spend not just a week, but months with the indigenous people and local communities, because without them, you cannot do anything. So I think if I understood you well, your first question, first of all, let me answer the second question. I think the second question was about whether if we establish a desertification alliance, is it a good idea to involve indigenous communities in that alliance? Right? Was that the question, the second one?
Yeah, so is there a plan to include them in the alliance?
Yes, yes. So at the UNCCD, there's no plan at the moment to create the alliance. However, because I'm working as a consultant for them, for actually the 3 Rio conventions, that is something that definitely is important. And how I foresee this being done is under the alliance, we should create a working group, an indigenous working group that would report to the Desertification Alliance once that's created. So that's how I foresee it. I hope I answered you well, but if I was the person responsible for creating the organogram and the operational plan for the Desertification Alliance for the UNCCD, I'll definitely advise them to add on the organogram a working group involving indigenous people as members to report back to the Secretary General of the Alliance on their feedback, because it's extremely important to have their feedback. They are the people on the ground. They know better than anyone what's best for them. That's with regards to the second question. I hope I answered you well. And with regards to the first one, can you kindly please repeat that? I caught it, but I just want to make sure I understand it well.
Yeah, sure. So from you working on the ground, right? So how has the response been from the indigenous community about climate change, about desertification? So how has the response been from them? So when you guys go down and speak to them about this, how have they received this? So that's my question.
Yes. So I'll give you one example. For example, that's not be related to desertification, but very much applicable to this case study. I cannot mention the name of the organization, but for example, there was an organization working on environmental project, and it was a Western organization in a foreign country, where they recruited local people, indigenous people, to assist their senior project managers who thought that they know better because they have a PhD in environment, for example. And then when they came to the field and started working with the local people, the indigenous community, I suggested that the indigenous community would give the senior people with PhD degrees a workshop on traditional ecological knowledge. And once the indigenous people gave them that lecture on traditional ecological knowledge, the senior environmentalists used that knowledge in the projects, the environmental projects that they were working on in the field, and it cut them costs, and also it saved them a lot of time, and it helped deliver their objectives. So yes, it's very important to include them. I hope I answered you well. That's one example that could be applicable to other contexts like desertification and biodiversity and many other things.
Thank you, Princess Aber. Thank you, Aaron, for the questions. We have another question from the floor. Also want to remind everybody online that feel free to use the raise hand function if you'd like to ask a question.
Dear Princess Aber Saud, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bejan. I am first year master's student in Hiroshima University. Thank you very much, first of all, for your brilliant lecture, because it was really important for me and it was really informative. To be honest, I got a lot of information. I believe that I will rewatch this today's lecture again, because I am now studying environmental issues. My main interest is my region where I come from. I'm from Tajikistan, Central Asia. So I believe you are well aware that we are facing a huge problem with desertification in the Central Asia. And I'd like to ask if you have enough information, how do you evaluate current attempt or initiatives by Central Asian countries to combat desertification in the region? And my second question is there any international fund or any example of regional fund to combat desertification? If not, do you think is it important to create one? And my third question is there any, can you name any successful initiative in any region that other regions can take an example in order to solve the desertification problem in their region or country? Thanks a lot.
Can you repeat the first question, dear, please? I couldn't catch that.
Yeah, could you please, how do you evaluate the current attempt or initiatives by Central Asian countries to combat desertification in the region? Please answer this if you have enough information about my region, because I am mainly studying about my region. So desertification is a very important issue, so I'm trying to deeply learn about this problem.
Yes.
So it's important to me, like, to know opinions from like experts about the current situation there. I mean, current situation in resolving the issues now, like what this country is doing. Are they doing enough to combat desertification in the region?
Thank you, Bejan. And please go ahead, Princess Aber.
Yes, yes. I'm so glad that you asked this question. Sorry, can you repeat your name, please?
Bejan.
Bejan.
Yeah.
Okay, Bejan, excellent question. I was actually for the first question that you asked me about Central Asia and Tajikistan as your country, right?
Yeah.
I think the best way, from my opinion, I'm not an expert in Central Asian desertification context, but I have been involved in some meetings where this was mentioned, and my own analysis and from my readings, there is an advantage and a disadvantage in Tajikistan. I'm speaking academically purely. Tajikistan is the place where snow leopards are found at a large scale. And unfortunately, to be very blunt, and I'm sure you know this, there's an issue whereby the snow leopards, which may be gone extinct in Tajikistan, are not really getting the attention they deserve from the authorities in Tajikistan. So I want to also link that to desertification. Snow leopards are species that thrive in arid areas, and which was desertification. So I think the best thing to do is to create a national strategy for Tajikistan on desertification and include the biodiversity species that thrive on arid environments, such as the snow leopard. And this is a priority because studies say that snow leopards may go extinct in 2035, which is very soon. Unfortunately, in Tajikistan, I heard from a lot of technical meetings, snow leopards, species that are important to desertification environments and ecosystems, are being used for illegal wildlife trafficking. So that's something I think I would approach to answer the first question. I hope I answered you well and you're satisfied. Yeah. Okay. And then for the second question, it was about funding. Is there an international fund or regional fund? Yes, there is. There is an. I'm sure there's an international one that belongs to the United Nations, and it depends on each time the COP hosts. The UNCCD Convention on Desertification, they provide funding for that. So there is, yes, but I'm not sure about the regional ones nor the national funds. But of course, it is a necessary thing. And I think if an alliance is created and a pledge is requested from member states who are members in this alliance, then that would be a great thing to raise funds for projects that serves this topic. That's with regards to the second question. This third question, successful initiative on desertification. My favorite one is the one that South Korea came up with, which is the Peace Forest Initiative. This also deserves a lot of time for me to explain and discuss for maybe another day, or if you want to talk more about it, you can take my email, any of the attendees from NERPS, and email me directly, and I'd be more than happy to have a chit chat with you about the context and details about the Korea's initiative to the UNCCD on linking peace and forest together. So this is one of the best case studies, and I encourage you to read more about that. Thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Princess Aber. I know some of our in-person participants still have some questions, but I'd like to now give the floor to one question from our online participant, Seema Sharma, and she or he asked about the role of developing nations in the peace and climate change nexus. What's your opinion on that?
The name is Sharma?
Yeah, Seema Sharma.
Seema, and the question is?
What is the role of developing nations in the peace climate change nexus?
Oh, I think they are the primary maestros to developing the international strategy for the peace and desertification nexus. They are the primary maestros, the developing nations. I don't think that developed nations, even though I don't really like the terminology developed, I don't like it, but just to answer the questions, yes, the developing nations are the maestros and the primary people to design the strategy for the peace desertification nexus strategy and operation plan. Yes.
Thanks. Thank you, Princess Aber, for that really concise answer to this important question. Many of us are from so-called developing nations, so it's also our role, as individuals to contribute to this. So thank you so much. I know that there's still a lot of, insights and knowledge that we can draw from your experience and from your expertise, but we're really running out of time now. And I also understand that you'd like to do an exercise with our in-person participants, but perhaps this will be an opportunity for your next visit or your next lecture at Hiroshima University. For our online participants, thank you so much for your time. We're going to do an exercise, but might not be very suitable for our online participants. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you already. You're free to stay because after this exercise, we're going to have the celebration of Positive Peace Society's first year anniversary. So thank you so much.
I'll be with you in spirit in that celebration.
Thank you. So Princess Aber, would you like to do the exercise for our in-person participants now, or you'd like to table that for the next lecture?
I can do it. I mean, if we have 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Or 15 minutes to be realistic.
All right. Are we okay with Positive Peace Society? We're okay with 15 minutes. All right.
Okay, let me explain the exercise. Okay. So I'm really interested and excited to know about what the participants would have to say about this. So the first, I had initially 3 exercises, but one is a primary one, and this is what we will go with. So I want to launch a debate on the land restoration dilemma. Okay, that's the topic. If you can take notes so we can save time. The idea here is to encourage participants to critically evaluate the priorities and trade-offs between land restoration, number 1. Number 2, conflict prevention. Please take notes. Number 3, immediate human needs. So let's divide the audience into 3 groups. Divide yourself as you like. The group number 1 is going to be the local government, okay? And the local government will prioritize rapid economic development. All right? And shall I continue or am I going fast? Good, okay. Group number 2 is the international NGOs. And the role of the international NGO is, please take notes, to focus on land restoration and environmental sustainability.
Princess Aber, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Maybe it's good now to group you so that you know what to focus on before you continue the task. So if I will count around the room 1, 2, 3, we have 3 groups, right? So we'll have 1, 2, 3, and that's your assigned number. Then if it's about what is it? The government, right? Then
Yes.
that's your task. So I'll start with you, Bejansan. 1,
2, 3.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 1.
would you like to join, Ahomsan? Yes, please. Noah-san.
3.
3, okay. All right, good. So it's even. Okay, if you could please repeat the number 1.
Of course. The group
We have
1,
3
local,
groups.
yeah, it's like you're acting, okay? For group
Role
1,
playing.
exact role play. For group 1, imagine you're the local government. Your priority, write it down, is prioritizing rapid economic development as a government. Now, I'm talking about group 2. You are the international NGO. Your priority is to focus on land restoration and environmental sustainability. And then now going to group 3, you are the local communities affected by desertification. Please, who's the person from Tajikistan? I think you should be on that group. because he was interested in the indigenous one. So group number 3 is local communities affected by desertification. Your task is who needs immediate relief for food security and livelihoods. Okay, I think all is clear for all the groups. Now, each group must develop a 5-minute strategy to combat desertification. Just quickly, bullet points. And they must address the following dilemma. What is the following dilemma? Their limited resources allow them to select only one priority, which is economic development, land restoration, or immediate relief. After each group presents their strategy, the 3 groups will debate for 5 minutes only. That's it.
All right.
Is that clear? Yeah?
Yes. Thank you, Princess Aber. Perhaps in the interest of time, you don't need to present 5-minute strategy. Maybe you'll have 3 bullet points. And then after presenting those bullet points, your strategies, your 3 strategies, then we'll have maybe questions instead of debate, to make sure that we can cover all of this with the limited time. All right, so I now request those to please go to your group, 1, 2, 3, and then you'll have, if you don't mind, Princess Aber, I'll try to just compress the time here. If you,
of course, you're the maestro. Go ahead. Yeah.
We'll give you 5 minutes to discuss, and then come up with 3 key strategies for your assigned stakeholder.
Yeah.
Present those strategies, and then we'll have questions.
Perfect. I'm super excited to hear your bullet points.
All right. So, Princess, thank you so much.
Please pay attention.
I'm representing local government A. We have come up with a comprehensive strategy. First is we would like to maximize the utilization of natural resources, such as land and forests, with consultations with local government organizations. Why? Because we would like to increase employment for the local community, of course. And through this, and how do we create this employment is through the establishment of small and medium enterprises. So that's all. Easy and that's all. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Group 2 representative.
Okay, thank you. First is to forestation, doing afforestation, because I think it's a kind of fastest way to realizing how we face the land restoration sort of problem. And the second is to presenting the environmental problem to more people in a way that the people can knowledge about the problem that we are facing. So I have one example. Back in Indonesia, we're having lots of problems that where the sea
just
is
very briefly, just strategies. 3
okay,
strategies.
the point is to show about what is the problem and to show the people about the problem. And the third one is the promoting NGO kind of aids, or maybe you can also we work with other NGOs so we can make a world better place. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent. Thank you.
Finally, the indigenous communities, the local communities.
Hi, Princess Aber. I'm representing the local community. This is my first time talking with the real princess, so it's an honor.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't wear my tiara today.
Yeah. So we came up with these 3 strategies where we want to push for include of local community with governments and international organizations. We want to push for policies which prevent desertification. And then we want to raise more awareness for local community through maybe digitalization of information. So that's 3 points from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think with that short time, just a few minutes, and you delivering these bullet points on government, NGO, and also indigenous communities, imagine what can we achieve if truly we worked as these 3 groups together into developing one holistic strategy to promote this agenda on desertification and peace. So thank you for participating in this exercise. And I'm aware that you have to go. I don't want to take much of your time. Thank you again, Professor Dalia. Thank you for everybody attending. It was an utmost pleasure, and I really enjoyed my time speaking with all of you.
Again for attending the NERPS webinar, this NERPS webinar, and I hope to see all of you in our future events and activities. Thank you so much. A round of applause.
Thanks a lot. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Happy Peace Day.
Happy Peace Day, Princess Abir. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.